Hey, what is up, all you lonely watchers out there? Almost every series experiences change. Whether it's trying to mature with its audience or it just wants to experiment, you're always bound to see changes after a while. This, of course, is also a phenomenon that impacts the Yokai Watch franchise. While there is no community consensus, today I'd like to break down my theory of the 5 distinct eras of the Yokai Watch franchise. Mainly focusing on the games and anime, but also taking other elements of the series into consideration, like the manga and toys. Please keep in mind that since most Yokai Watch media remains unlocalized, the dates I give for each era will be in relation to the Japanese media exclusively, even if said media got a Western release. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the very beginning of the series, or what I would like to call the Classic Era. This era began with the release of the Yokai Watch manga's first chapter on December 15th, 2012, to the release of Yokai Watch Blasters on July 11th, 2015. Contrary to popular belief, the Yokai Watch manga in CoroCoro magazine was the first piece of official Yokai Watch media released, 7 months before the first 3DS game and over a year before the anime. The manga had a Monster of the Week mixed with slice of life structure, where average protagonist Nate Adams would be caused common problems by a yokai, such as saying something uncalled for, forgetting something important, which he would evidently overcome and befriend said yokai. This series did alright for itself, and would continue to release chapters via CoroCoro up to and beyond the release of Yokai Watch for the Nintendo 3DS on July 11th, 2013. This game kept the same type of storytelling besides maybe a boss at the end of the chapter, which was quite refreshing for an RPG and helped it stand out against its main competitor, Pokemon. There is a main villain in this game, but he quite literally does not show up until the very end of the game, making him feel like an afterthought. The designs of yokai in this game were cutesy adaptations of creatures from Japanese and greater Asian mythology, representations of Japanese cultural traditions, and whatever this guy is supposed to be. This is a design element that would eventually be sidelined, but it's very central here. The series' unapologetically Japanese nature was unfortunately one of the contributing factors to its lack of success in the West, but I still appreciate it to this day. January 8th of 2014 would see the start of the most iconic part of the franchise, the Yokai Watch anime, which was basically a less unhinged version of the manga. Sales of Yokai Watch on the Nintendo 3DS skyrocketed after the first couple episodes aired, and July 10th would see the series expand with the release of Yokai Watch 2, Honken Ganso, or Bony Spirits and Fleshy Souls. These games incorporated a lot more Japanese elements, like the introduction of classic yokai, which were more literal interpretations of Japanese mythological creatures. Level 5 also tried to create more synergy with the anime by adding elements from there, such as Jibanyan living with the protagonist and Whisper relying on his yokai pad for info but being too prideful to admit it. This made Yokai Watch 2 the best-selling game in the franchise at over 7 million copies sold, which eventually got a third version called Shinuchi, or Psychic Specters, which came out alongside the first theatrical release. Yokai Watch the movie, The Secret of Creation, Neon, which was based on the plot of Yokai Watch 2. This movie smashed box office records when it released, pre-selling over 1 million tickets. While all this was going on, kids were collecting yokai medals, multiple trading card lines released, and even an arcade game that utilized said trading cards. Yokai Watch was at its absolute peak in popularity at this time, but that success would slowly start to fade the next year in 2015 as a new era began. This era had Yokai Watch Blasters as a turning point, beginning with the release of that game on July 11th, 2015, and ending alongside the original run of the Yokai Watch anime on March 30th, 2018. Blasters was the first console spin-off the series received, which took the gameplay of the Blasters side mode from 2 and greatly expanded upon it. This game also introduced the yokai Usapion and the United States as an in-universe location. setting the stage for Yokai Watch 3. In the meantime though, Yokai Watch games were all over the place. In the span of a little over a year, many new Yokai Watch spin-offs released, such as a Tsum Tsum-esque mobile game, an arcade adaptation of Yokai Watch Blasters, and full crossover games with Koei Tecmo's Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Ubisoft's Just Dance. Level 5 also began opening merch stores in the fall of 2015 based on the convenience stores in the game, Yorozu Mart, and they were a huge hit. The anime was also starting to prepare for Yokai Watch 3 by introducing Haley Ann Thomas as the new protagonist in Season 3. This would all culminate in the release of Yokai Watch 3, Sushi and Tempura, on July 16th, 2016. This game let Usapion partner up with the new protagonist, Haley Ann Thomas, a geeky otaku girl who actually had character in comparison to Nate and Katie's usually blank slate. On top of this, you also have to play as Nate in this entry, who is forced to move to the United States and encounters yokai based on American stereotypes and UFOs and all this other stuff. The anime at this time was also introducing the American elements and slowly becoming more unhinged in the process. Of course, American yokai made an appearance, but also the horrid Jerry, an American stereotype who moved to Springdale and does naive yet despicable things to the yokai around him. Nate and the crew also tend to get a lot more mean towards each other, causing this sort of Family Guy type situation. All the characters are getting exaggerated to extremes that make them not feel like themselves anymore. The series also leaned into more racy and inherently sexual jokes about the young characters, which is a huge turnoff for many people, myself included. Yokai Watch 3 also sold not too well in comparison to other entries, due to the lack of affinity the audience had for both the American setting and Haley Ann Thomas. Yeah, many people I talk to are surprised by this fact for some reason, but the Japanese audience does not like Haley, hence why they slowly got rid of her over time despite keeping Usapion around. 3 still sold over 2 million copies though, and the series was starting to influence its main competitor Pokemon, with many pointing out that the Rotom Dex in Sun and Moon is kind of comparable to Whisper, and the Z moves are comparable to Sultimates. Again, not a direct copy, but definitely inspired. The anime continued to trudge along, and although it did have some hits every now and again, like the Kyoroi series of shorts, most people continued to find it distasteful. That December saw the release of the equally controversial live-action hybrid movie, Yokai Watch: The Whale of Two Worlds. Alongside it came another experiment from Level 5. Yokai Watch 3's definitive edition, Sukiyaki, brought Blaster's Tea to the game, a mode more focused on dungeon crawling and treasure hunting. Level 5 began leaning more into this angle of the franchise by featuring Blaster's Tea segments in the closing episodes of the anime, as well as giving Blaster's Tea the full game treatment with Yokai Watch Blasters 2, the secret legendary treasure of Bombaria, Sword and Magnum, releasing on December 16th, 2017. The final game of this era. This game tried to expand upon the gameplay and lore introduced in Blaster's Tea and the anime, but flopped due to releasing in a broken state, as well as being a 3DS game that released 9 months after the release of the Nintendo Switch. Despite this, Blaster's Tea got some of the most merch support out of all of the sub-series, but Level 5 unfortunately had to bring this series to a close. On March 30th, 2018, the series finale of the Yokai Watch anime aired, ending an era. But don't think Level 5 didn't have something else big planned. Their biggest experiment yet. The Shadowside era overlaps slightly with the experimental era, beginning with the release of Yokai Watch Shadowside: The Return of the Oni King in theaters on December 16th, 2017, to the final episode of the Yokai Watch 2019 reboot anime airing on December 20th, 2019. The Yokai Watch Shadowside movie took a big jump by traveling 30 years into the future to follow Nate's daughter Summer and her friends Cole and Bruno in their venture to save the world from the invading wicked yokai, the Onimaru. Yokai in the future get a total design overhaul, as well as possessing a more scary and powerful form called their shadow side. This movie was more serious, being the first piece of Yokai Watch media to depict blood and aim at an older target audience, more so PG-13. This is something that some series with a younger demographic eventually do, attempt to age up alongside their audience. The movie did pretty well and emotionally struck people. Of course, we still got tons of toys and a promotion in Yokai Watch Blasters 2, but the plot in the movie itself retained a serious tone. The movie had a nice conclusion, but also set up an anime series, and like clockwork, Yokai Watch Shadowside took the original Yokai Watch's time slot starting on April 13th, 2018. This series had a Monster of the Week format, but also had an overarching plot unlike the original series, making it the favorite of many older fans. This was the main attraction of 2018, but many mobile game spin-offs reminiscent of the experimental era were also released, such as an online companion game to Yokai-san Gokushi, the rhythm game Garapo Rhythm, and a game similar to Pokemon Go called Yokai Watch World. This year's movie, however, Yokai Watch Forever Friends, followed a different set of characters from the 1960s. Jack, Alistair, and Tay seek to confront a yokai stealing the souls of their loved ones in order to retrieve them. This movie acts as an expansion of the lore introduced in Shadowside, as well as introducing some new concepts, such as the God Side. This was also one of the many pieces needed to put together this era's main event, Yokai Watch 4. The Shadowside anime came to its natural conclusion on March 29th, 2019. But that's not all the series had in store, as they decided to reboot the Yokai Watch anime on April 5th, 2019. This new series gave Nate the same watch used in the future by his daughter Summer. Continuity be darned. Unfortunately, this series suffered a lot of the same problems present in the latter half of the original anime's third season. It introduced the One Chance side as a replacement for Shadowside, which caused a completely random effect. Haley also made an appearance, but she was greatly sidelined. This was also the first year Level 5 put out new mainline entries on the Nintendo Switch, with Yokai Watch 1 for Nintendo Switch releasing this year, but more importantly, Yokai Watch 4, we're looking up at the same sky, releasing on June 20th, 2019. This game attempted to bring together Nate and Katie's story with the stories of Yokai Watch Shadowside and Yokai Watch Forever Friends, with the plot of the game being heavily inspired by both series while also introducing its own elements. Yokai Watch 4 had a much darker tone, greater scope and story, and a beautiful art style greatly departing from that of the other games in the series, as expected with this big of a leap in hardware. This game cut a lot of yokai and originally was only supposed to follow the Shadowside crew, before the team decided to merge all the timelines into one for a consistent campaign, for better or for worse. One last hurrah for this era came with the release of the Plus Plus DLC for the game on December 5th, 2019, which also brought Yokai Watch to a non-Nintendo console for the first time, the PlayStation 4. While this era ended alongside the reboot anime on December 20th, 2019, the sixth movie, released only a week earlier, was quick to establish a new one. This era lasted from the release of the sixth Yokai Watch movie on December 13th, 2019, to the end of the Y School Heroes anime on April 2nd, 2021. The movie that started this era, Yokai Watch Jam, Y School Heroes, Can a Cat Be a Hero, took place even further in the future than Shadowside and followed a bunch of yokai reincarnated into humans attending a boarding school together and fighting a new type of yokai called Onryo. This movie also spun into its own anime series called Yokai Watch Jam, Y School Heroes, Close Encounters of the N Kind, which followed the same crew solving mysteries at the school. While this series had an overarching plot like Shadowside, the humor was more reminiscent of Yokai Watch Season 3 and 2019. Although it was a bit tamer, and at the very least it wasn't ruining the characters that we'd grown to love, it was introducing us to some new, slightly unhinged characters. Unlike past eras, Level 5 solely focused on Y School Heroes during this time, with lots of merchandise and even rebranding the Yukipedia arcade game with some Y School Heroes flair. August 13th would see the release of this era's only game, Yokai Watch Jam, Y School Heroes, Bustlin' School Life on Nintendo Switch, with a PS4 release coming in October. Since Yokai Watch 4 sold so poorly in comparison to the series' other games, Y School Heroes had a much tighter budget. The entirety of the game was originally set to look like Yokai Watch 4, but it only ever reached that level of quality in the opening cutscene, with the rest of the game being in a chibi art style. Its gameplay was also very reminiscent of the Yokai Watch Blaster series, sometimes being called Blasters 3. Many who played it, including myself, consider it to be the worst game in the series, or at least mediocre. But it did receive many free updates adding substantial story content on top of the more controversial microtransactions, being the first and only paid game in the series to implement such a technique. While the game started out following the plot of the movie and anime beat for beat, the second half of the game and the planned Y School Heroes sequel movie would split into two different yet plausible directions for the story, creating a weird disconnect, but also being very commendable as one piece of media no longer spoils the other. A problem I had with the Shadowside era. This game was one of the worst selling in the series though, only shipping a mere 78,000 copies between both versions. The anime did okay, but it struggled to bring back old Yokai Watch fans or create new ones. So Level 5 started to do some damage control. The second Y School Heroes movie was cancelled and turned into a cheaper Season 2, which aired its finale on April 2nd, 2021. This opened the doors for a new series, one that surely won't fail. This final era began with the airing of the first episode of the second Yokai Watch anime reboot on April 9th, 2021. And I'd say from our current point of view, we're still in this era. After the Y School Heroes anime ended, Level 5 was quick to launch a second Yokai Watch anime reboot just a week later that tried to capitalize on nostalgia by giving Nate his old watch and having him interact with older yokai, as well as unfortunately ditching Haley altogether. The series unfortunately suffered from Season 3 and 2019's writing, maybe even worse. For Yokai Watch 1's 8th birthday in July, Level 5 released what is, at the time of writing, the latest entry in the series, Yokai Watch 1 Smartphone, a port of the Nintendo Switch remake of the original Yokai Watch game to mobile devices. Bandai released a new version of the original toy watch, as well as limited metal sets that no longer sold in blind packs, but rather in definitive sets. Level 5 coasted on the anime's first season for a while, before releasing the first new movie since 2016 based on Nate's world, Yokai Watch the Movie, How Nate and I Met Nyan, and Me Too, which had a limited theatrical release on November 12th. This film attempted to familiarize new audiences with Nate, Jibanyan, and Whisper by taking their old anime episode origin stories and stitching them together with newly animated transitions. The anime was quickly renewed for a second season in 2022, which upgraded Nate to the Model Zero watch, which also brought a ton of new merch with it. Unlike its 2014 counterpart, this new Yokai Watch and Model Zero toy was backwards compatible with all the new medals, had new songs and sounds, and released alongside new blind boxes, which finally made collecting for the series fun again. This would all come to a close in 2025, where January 13th saw the release of the final movie, which also acted as the reboot anime series finale, Yokai Watch the Movie, Jibanyan vs. Komasan. This movie was an original story which also attempted to bring some Yokai Watch 3 elements into the series, and I could easily see a Yokai Watch 3 based third season. Unfortunately, or fortunately depending on how you look at it, Jibanyan vs. Komasan marked the end of the Yokai Watch 2021 reboot anime. No new series came to replace Yokai Watch 2021, and the entire Yokai Watch anime as a whole had officially ended alongside the reboot toy line. The manga would also stop receiving volumes in May of that year after a long 11-year run, and Bandai would release a new 10th anniversary Yokai Watch, the last piece of Yokai Watch merch, and an awesome send-off. The only active game in the franchise at this point is the mobile game Puni Puni, as all the others had been shut down in either this era or the last. Level 5 had failed to recapture the magic, and the Book of Yokai Watch had seemingly come to a close. That is, until the Level 5 Vision on November 29th teased a character that Hino hinted on social media is from a project similar or related to Yokai Watch, which was at the time titled Ghostcraft. They also stated that more info would be revealed at Spring 2024's Level 5 Vision. And after getting delayed into the fall, we finally got a full trailer for the newly titled Holy Horror Mansion. After the trailer, Hino said that they would reveal more information about the project's multimedia facet in the next, currently unscheduled, Level 5 Vision, implying the series will replace Yokai Watch. I'm still hesitant to say that this series and era have come to a complete end until Yokai Watch Puni Puni either gets shut down or rebranded to a Holy Horror Mansion theme, assuming the game ever comes out. But that's where things currently stand. While I wasn't around for every one of these eras, I appreciate them each in their own way, and I truly hope we aren't in the final one. What era do you like the most? Do you agree with the eras I came up with? If not, what would you do to sort the timeline differently? Make sure to let me know in the comments, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye, my lonely watchers.